Hi there, you're listening to What's New Today, a kids podcast about current events shaping our world. This is Sangeeta, your host from India, and in every episode, I take one news story from the real world and I chat about it with young children who join me on the podcast. Today's topic is related to space. Now, I know Earth is wonderful, but one day we might need more space to live, especially the way our world is changing. If we could travel to Mars and build homes there, that would solve a lot of our problems, right? Plus, the early explorers to Mars can discover hidden secrets out there. Now, SpaceX just launched a giant rocket that has taken us one step closer to getting to Mars. Now, before you get too excited about booking your next summer vacation in Mars, we're not going to be there by 2025, but maybe a few years from now. To speak about what SpaceX has achieved with this launch, I'm joined in today's episode by two curious kids. Can I request the two of you to introduce yourself? We usually go alphabetical order. Darsh, do you want to go first?
Hello everyone, my name is Darsh. I live in Chennai city. I study in Mahasai Montessori Resource Center and I'm 10 years old.
Welcome, Darsh. Rohan, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello everyone, my name is Rohan. I am in fifth grade. I study in Shiv Nadar School and I live in Chennai. This is my first time on this podcast.
How are you feeling about being on a podcast?
Happy and excited, sort of both.
Happy and excited, wonderful. Darsh, welcome back. We've done a couple of podcasts before. What do both of you think about space? Do you read a lot about space in your school? Or where do you get all your information about space?
The thing is, I don't generally rely on my school to get information about stuff. I usually just take a book from my home or I just Google it.
I have a lot of books at my house, about black holes and other things, such as, for example, astronauts, the stages of a rocket. So my class is in a unit on space, and I even showed a model of Saturn V, which I built on my own out of Lego. My father helped me in one step.
Wow! You built a model of Saturn V. Do you want to tell us
Yeah.
what Saturn V did?
It took Buzz and Neil Armstrong to the moon.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Absolutely right, Rohan. Saturn V was that incredible rocket that took Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin and helped man land on the moon for the first time ever. Now back to the present and on to today's news story. Elon Musk had announced a few years ago. I'm assuming both of you know who Elon Musk is, right?
Yes.
So Elon Musk announced a few years ago that he was going to build a rocket that was going to take people to Mars. It was also going to take materials that people needed to construct a complete city in Mars. And it was also not going to cost too much. How do you think he was going to achieve that? Do you guys have any ideas?
He could be creating smaller rockets to send to space, like smaller ones that carry a smaller load but take less time to build, so that he can just send one thing there and then he can build another, send that there, and then by that time the other one would have come back and then he can send it back there, like that many times.
So he'll make a small one and he'll keep sending it up and down between Earth and Mars.
And keep making others, which he'll also keep sending.
Okay, sort of like a relay race. What does Rohan think?
He uses reusable rockets, so it's cheaper and and that's what we're going to talk about today. SpaceX has used reusable rockets, a two-stage, he built, as Darsh said, he builds smaller rockets, like a 2-stage or a 3-stage rocket.
So both of you think the rockets will be smaller, and both of you think that the rockets are going to be reusable.
Yes.
You're both right on one count, which is that the rockets will be reusable. But they are not going to be small. The Starship Superheavy one is much bigger than even the Saturn V, the one that Rohan was talking about, right? It is way bigger than that. It can carry a much higher payload than what Saturn V carried when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin went to the moon.
Wow! I went to the SpaceX website and they clearly listed the dimensions of the rocket. It could carry from 100 to 150 metric tons. It was quite literally 121 meters tall with a diameter of 6 meters.
It's actually the diameter of 9 meters. I found out on the same website which Darsh went to that Starflight rocket is twice as powerful as the Saturn V. It can carry twice the heavy payload, so the engines need to be twice as powerful.
So yes, it is 9 meters, I think, in diameter. But I'm going to leave a link to the SpaceX website. So all of you little nerds out there who love getting all your dimensions and payload weights, right? You can look up the links there. But the moot point is it's a very heavy booster. Don't assume that SpaceX is looking at sending something very light and reusing it multiple times. It's taking on a very big target, which many people thought was impossible until SpaceX demonstrated this just a couple of days ago, that SpaceX can send something super heavy, because you need very heavy boosters if you have to send people and equipments to Mars.
Yeah, but at the same time, the heavy booster would weigh them down a lot actually. So they found a way to bring the booster back to Earth, and then the booster steered itself to the launch pad where it was caught by two big robotic arms like chopsticks.
Oh, you guys have seen the video on social media?
Yes.
Yeah, Rohan, you wanted to say something?
So about the launch thing, it wasn't like a robotic arm. It was built out of metal. It's like a structure where the rocket just landed somehow. And if there was a failure, it would land in the Gulf of Mexico. If there was some error or anything, their backup plan was for it to land in the Gulf of Mexico. But no such errors were occurred.
That's what I meant by robotic arm. I meant that giant pole-like thing that caught it.
Okay, so you guys have done a grand job in explaining it, but just for the sake of our listeners who probably don't know and haven't seen this wonderful event on social media, I am going to leave a link to the 57-second video of how this booster landed back on Earth and how it was caught. But if you're just listening to it on audio, here's what happened. So the first step towards making a rocket reusable, Elon Musk thought, I must catch the first stage of the rocket, which falls back. Instead of letting it fall back into an ocean, what if I just caught it back onto the launch pad? Then I can reuse the same booster over and over again, which means the overall cost of sending people to the moon comes down. Because in the 1960s and 70s, when astronauts would go to the moon, each time they would have to build the entire rocket, because the rocket would fly and some stages would fall off back onto the Earth and they would just fall into the ocean. But SpaceX decided we will just catch back all those boosters and keep reusing them. And that's what it just demonstrated. And when the booster flew up into the space, it was about 3 minutes and 54 seconds in space. It had used up its fuel and it was just going to fall back down. That booster flew towards the launch pad slowly. Two giant arms on the launch pad opened themselves and caught that booster when it landed on the launch pad. It's a beautiful sight. I definitely urge all of you to look at the video, which I'm leaving a link to that in the show notes below. Yes, Darsh?
most of the time, what these big space companies do, they just direct it towards one specific point in the ocean. They are called satellite dumping grounds. There's one in the Indian Ocean, there's another in the Pacific Ocean, there's one in the Atlantic Ocean, I think. And just so that it's more predictable
Yeah.
for fish to eat and die,
Yeah.
which is pollution, which we don't want.
Yeah, that's true, which is pollution, which we don't want. So, apart from safeguarding our oceans, it also helps us now reuse all of those boosters. True or false question. This is the first time that SpaceX has ever recaptured or recovered any rocket's first stage. True or false?
True. True.
True.
True. It's true.
Okay, I'm very sad, but I've got to say false. So I don't know if you all have heard, SpaceX has launched a series of rockets called Falcon 9. Have you ever heard that word?
Yeah. Yeah. I read it up in the article. As to some part in Wikipedia, as to the successor of Falcon 9.
The difference is Falcon 9 is a very tiny first stage booster compared to the super heavy booster. So far, SpaceX has launched, I think, more than 300 Falcon 9s, and it has recovered almost all of them. But they were never recovered with these two giant arms like chopsticks. Do you want to take a guess how they recovered them?
Most likely, they just fished them out from the ocean with giant fishing ropes.
Yes, Rohan, what's your guess?
Maybe they didn't use the chopsticks, but they might have again used the launch pad. They would have like taken out a giant, like, what should I say, 50 feet big giant parachute, and then it's like slowly takes it, and then it just.
So, but no, that is also not what happened. But I think Darsh is a little closer. So, what these Falcon 9 first stage boosters have been doing is they are directed onto a drone ship that is usually sailing in an ocean. And so these Falcon 9 boosters come and land on the drone ships. And those drone ships collect them and bring them to the launch pad. Falcon 9 is much lighter. It is way lighter. So it's not something that they can really use to send man to Mars. So, last part of this episode, quiz time. This quiz time is not for the three of us, but it's for our listeners to check if they've been paying attention to everything that we've been speaking about. So, we usually have 3 questions, and each one of us can ask one question.
Yes.
Wonderful. Rohan, do you want to ask the first question? Something based on what we've just discussed.
What part of the rocket connected with the chopsticks that made it stop right there on the spot? There are 2 things which hold it, and that's the question.
The 2 rods you're talking about? Is that the answer?
Yep, that is.
Darsh, do you want to ask the second question?
My question is, what is the name of the rocket that was recovered previously before the Super Heavy?
It's called the Falcon 9.
Wonderful. Okay, now the last and the final question. The Starship Super Heavy that was just caught, the booster of which was just caught by the 2 mechanical arms.
Yeah.
Is this rocket way more powerful or way less powerful compared to the rocket that sent Neil Armstrong to the moon?
It's way more powerful.
It's much more powerful.
It is.
It's twice as powerful.
Wow, I'm glad we can be that precise and not just say generic adjectives like way more. Wonderful. Thank you, my little space nerds, for joining me in this episode. But usually before we wrap up, we ask you to leave our listeners with one episode that you really enjoyed listening to on What's New Today as a recommendation. Rohan, you're new to the podcast channel. Do you want to tell us any one episode that you really enjoyed?
I enjoyed the India podcast series. Pretty interesting. I got to know about Vikram Sarabhai, who called Chandrayaan instead of Soumya.
Wonderful. Okay, so there is an 8-part podcast series on India's foray into space. It's very beautiful, even if I may say so. It starts with the stories of how Vikram Sarabhai got the idea to even launch the very first satellite from a tiny little fishing town in Kerala. It starts from with those stories and ends where we successfully landed Chandrayaan 3. I'm leaving a link to that podcast series in the show notes below. Darsh, what's your recommendation?
I like the episode where you talked about Italian dogs getting their DNA tested.
That was a fun episode, 20 question style episode, right?
Ah,
I
yeah, it
remember
was
that.
very informative, that too.
Yeah, and I didn't know about it. Thanks for telling me. You just recommended not only the listeners and you recommended me.
Yeah,
Wow.
you're welcome.
Yes, so Rohan, you can check out this link to this in the show notes below. It's a very funny and an interesting story about how people in Italy are going to ensure that dog owners who let their dogs poop anywhere on the road and not pick it up will be penalized by using something mind blowing. The hint is scientific, but it's really funny. It's hilarious. It's one of my super fun episodes that I'd recorded. So I'll leave a link to that in the show notes below too. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, please do share it with your friends and family. You can support our team by buying us a cup of coffee, and that would help us keep this podcast ad free. And you can find a link to how you can buy us a cup of coffee in the show notes below. For those of you who love the feel of a book in your hands, I'm curating the most captivating news stories. This 2024 edition covers global news stories in geopolitics, as well as the ones related to science and sports. Keep an eye out on this space and we'll announce as soon as the edition is ready. Thank you so much, Darsh. Thank you so much, Rohan. It's been a pleasure chatting with both of you. I hope our listeners had their fill of space news from this episode. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.